Welcome to Liberty Voice USA, the channel where truth, facts, and unfiltered political reality come first. In an age where outrage overshadows honesty and performance often replaces principle, our mission remains clear: to strip away the noise, confront the spin, and bring you the unvarnished truth about America's political stage. Because here, we don't deal in slogans, we deal in facts. This week's spotlight turned toward a moment that perfectly captured the deep divisions and double standards in Washington. A fiery clash between Speaker Mike Johnson and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. What began as a tense committee exchange quickly became a lesson in composure, restraint, and the power of reason under pressure. It all unfolded when Mike Johnson, visibly agitated, raised his voice at Representative Crockett during a heated oversight hearing. His tone carried the sharp edge of political frustration, echoing the same pattern we've seen time and again: a man in power resorting to volume when his argument begins to lose ground. But what followed wasn't a shouting match. It wasn't chaos. It was something far more powerful: silence, poise, and precision from Crockett, whose calm and deliberate response turned the entire moment on its head. Witnesses described the room as tense. Cameras captured Johnson leaning forward, voice tightening as he accused Democrats of turning oversight into a circus. He gestured sharply, his words clipped, accusing members of what he called political theater. But even as his tone rose, Crockett sat steady, her eyes focused, her demeanor controlled. She didn't interrupt. She didn't raise her voice. When she finally spoke, her words carried a calm authority that silenced the entire chamber. "Mr. Speaker," she said softly, "if accountability feels like a circus, perhaps the problem isn't the ring, it's the performance."
In that single line, she did what few manage in today's political environment. She turned the spotlight back on the spectacle itself. It wasn't just a clever retort. It was a pointed reminder that transparency and oversight are not acts of defiance, they're obligations of democracy. For a brief moment, the noise faded. Johnson, visibly taken aback, paused. His expression shifted, not quite conceding, but caught between anger and recognition. And in that silence, the power dynamic shifted. Because in American politics, sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't the one shouting, it's the one that refuses to. This exchange didn't happen in isolation. It was part of a broader pattern, one that defines today's political theater. For years, congressional hearings have devolved into stages for viral clips, fundraising soundbites, and partisan outrage. The pursuit of truth has been replaced by the performance of indignation. And yet, every so often, a moment like this cuts through the performance, exposing just how fragile the illusion of control can be when faced with quiet confidence. Crockett's measured tone stood in sharp contrast to the aggression she faced. She didn't fight emotion with emotion. Instead, she used logic, poise, and precision, the tools of a true stateswoman. Her calm dismantled Johnson's argument not by force, but by clarity. She reminded everyone listening that leadership is not about dominance, it's about discipline. In the aftermath, the footage spread quickly across social media. Commentators from both sides weighed in, some defending Johnson's frustration, others applauding Crockett's composure. But beneath the surface of partisan reaction lay a deeper truth. What we witnessed wasn't just a debate between two members of Congress. It was a clash between two visions of power, one fueled by control, the other by conviction.
Johnson's outburst reflected a broader anxiety within his party, a growing unease as internal divisions deepen. With pressure mounting from his right flank and discontent brewing among moderates, every public appearance becomes a test, not just of policy, but of political survival. His anger, in many ways, was less about the moment and more about the message he's been forced to carry, one that's becoming harder to defend as fractures widen within his own ranks. Crockett, on the other hand, represented something different, a new kind of political presence emerging on the Democratic side, one not defined by shouting matches or rehearsed outrage, but by a grounded understanding of how power works when you refuse to be provoked by it. Her composure was more than personal restraint. It was a statement about how integrity can disarm aggression. When the video clip hit mainstream media, commentators described her as unflappable. The Washington Post called it a masterclass in controlled rebuttal. Even some conservative analysts admitted that her response shifted the energy in the room. But the real story wasn't about style or optics, it was about substance. Because at its core, this confrontation revealed how truth operates in an environment addicted to confrontation. There's something profoundly revealing about how often power mistakes calm for weakness, and how quickly that illusion collapses when calm is backed by clarity. In a time when American politics feels like an endless loop of noise, Crockett's restraint reminded millions of viewers that silence, when used strategically, isn't surrender, it's strength. Mike Johnson's moment of anger will likely fade into the broader stream of congressional soundbites, but the reason it resonated wasn't because it was unusual, it's because it was familiar. It exposed a tension at the heart of today's political culture, the fear of losing control in a system that rewards chaos. Every raised voice, every finger pointed across the aisle, every accusation shouted into the microphone, it all feeds into the same machine, a machine that thrives on outrage and distraction. And yet, moments like this, moments of stillness amid the noise, offer something that feels increasingly rare: perspective. Crockett's demeanor wasn't simply a reaction, it was a message. A reminder that the real work of governance doesn't happen in viral clips or political theater. It happens in the quiet moments of truth-telling, where accountability meets composure. As the hearing continued, the tone shifted. The room grew quieter. Questions became sharper. And for the first time that afternoon, the exchange began to resemble actual oversight, not a spectacle. Johnson tried to regain footing, pivoting back to policy, but the tension had already dissipated. Crockett's calm had disarmed the hostility. What remained was a conversation, not a confrontation. Later, in an interview, Crockett was asked about the incident. She smiled slightly and said, "I don't take yelling personally. I take it as a sign that the truth hit somewhere close." That statement, simple, poised, and quietly assertive, summed up what so many Americans feel about the tone of today's politics, that beneath the shouting and spectacle, there's still room for truth, if someone is willing to stand calm enough to speak it. The lesson here extends beyond that single exchange. It's about the kind of leadership this country desperately needs. Leadership that isn't afraid of disagreement, but refuses to be consumed by it. Leadership that sees the role of public service not as a stage, but as a responsibility. Mike Johnson's anger might have been born out of pressure, frustration, or fear of losing control in a divided Congress. But his outburst serves as a reminder that leadership based on emotional impulse rarely endures. Crockett's response, by contrast, showed what endurance looks like, not in volume, but in vision. In an era defined by political division, social media outrage, and performative partisanship, moments like these are more than viral clips. They're moral mirrors. They show us who's leading and who's merely reacting. They reveal the difference between authority and insecurity, between conviction and control. When the dust settled, one truth became clear. The voice that lasts isn't the one that shouts. It's the one that stands firm when shouted at. Jasmine Crockett proved that dignity, when paired with discipline, can end a rant more effectively than any argument ever could. And perhaps that's the message Washington needs to hear most, that strength isn't found in domination, but in composure. That truth doesn't need to yell to be heard, and that democracy, at its best, belongs not to the loudest voices in the room, but to the calmest minds willing to speak when it matters. Stay tuned, stay aware, and stay truthful. This is Liberty Voice USA, where facts speak louder than politics.